Alright, let's dive into something that's been making waves recently, the news that former Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has been sentenced to death in absentia. But before we get into the details, let me just say this: personally, I think this story is a perfect example of how history can come back to haunt you, even when you think you've escaped. It's not just about Assad, it's about the broader implications of accountability, justice, and the legacy of authoritarian regimes. So, let's break it down. First off, what makes this really interesting is the timing. Assad and his inner circle were sentenced for crimes against humanity and war crimes during Syria's 14-year conflict, which left about 500,000 people dead. But here's the kicker: this verdict comes 20 months after Assad's 5-decade family rule ended. If you take a step back and think about it, this isn't just a legal decision, it's a symbolic moment for Syria's new rulers to distance themselves from the past. It's like they're saying, we're not that regime. But does it really change anything for the people who suffered under Assad's rule? That's a question worth exploring. Now, let's talk about the players involved. Assad and his brother Maher fled to Russia after their government fell in 2024 and were granted political asylum. From my perspective, this is where things get messy. Russia's role here is fascinating. They're essentially shielding Assad from justice, which raises a deeper question: how do we hold leaders accountable when they have powerful allies protecting them? It's not just about Assad, it's about the global politics of impunity. What this really suggests is that international justice is often at the mercy of geopolitical interests. Another detail I find fascinating is the case of Atef Najib, Assad's maternal cousin. Najib was convicted for overseeing a crackdown in Daraa that sparked the uprising and eventual civil war. What many people don't realize is that this crackdown started with something seemingly small: teenagers writing anti-government graffiti on a school wall. But that act of defiance became a catalyst for mass protests, which were met with brutal force. If you ask me, this is a powerful reminder of how even the smallest acts of resistance can snowball into something much bigger. It's also a stark example of how authoritarian regimes often overreact to dissent, which only fuels the fire. Now, let's talk about Maher Assad, the former commander of the 4th Armored Division. This unit has been accused of some of the most heinous crimes during the conflict: killings, torture, extortion, drug trafficking, and running detention centers. Personally, I think this highlights a broader issue: the role of military and security forces in propping up dictatorships. These aren't just random acts of violence, they're part of a systematic strategy to maintain control. What this really suggests is that holding individuals like Maher accountable is just the first step. The real challenge is dismantling the systems that enable such atrocities. Finally, let's zoom out for a moment. This verdict is historic. It's the first time Assad or his inner circle has been held accountable in a Syrian court. But here's the thing: Assad is safe in Russia, and it's unlikely he'll ever face justice in person. So, what does this verdict actually achieve? In my opinion, it's more about symbolism than practical justice. It sends a message to the Syrian people and the world that the new government is willing to confront the past. But whether that translates into real change remains to be seen. So, what's the takeaway here? Personally, I think this story is a reminder that justice, especially in cases of mass atrocities, is rarely straightforward. It's tangled up in politics, power, and international relations. But it's also a reminder that accountability, even if it's symbolic, matters. It matters for the victims, for the survivors, and for the future of Syria. As we watch this unfold, I'll leave you with this question: can a nation truly heal without confronting the crimes of its past? Let me know what you think in the comments below.